Hi, and welcome everyone to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. Today we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. And as you just heard, today we're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Please be sure and join us in one of the various chat rooms to connect with our awesome guest today. I'm so excited to introduce you to him shortly. But before that, I just want to say that we're all on the precipice of a new era in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And my guest today, John Gertz, is at the forefront of this shift. For decades, our search has been defined by big radio dishes and the faint hope of a signal from across the cosmos. But what if we've been looking in the wrong place? John is here today to talk about his groundbreaking book entitled Reinventing SETI: New Directions in the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. He argues that the traditional search is built on outdated assumptions and that the answers we're looking for might not be light years away, but right here in our own cosmic backyard. And whether you're a seasoned astronomer, a sci-fi enthusiast, or just someone who looks up at the stars and wonders if we're alone, this conversation will challenge everything you think and know about finding alien life. So make sure you stay with us as we dive into this provocative and essential conversation about the future of SETI. And with that, John, how are you?
Very good, and thank you, Carol Ann, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, of course. So you have a long, very impressive bio, and I'm going to step away for a minute and let folks hear from you, a little bit about your background. And of course, we're going to be digging into your book, which I read and was magnificent. It was so informative, and I'm a layperson, and I found it so compelling, I couldn't put it down. It was that good.
Oh, thank you so much.
Of course. And as someone who's interested in this topic, I mean, like I said in my intro, you don't need to be an astrologer, an astronomer, any of the above. If you have somewhat of an interest, this book is definitely going to be the right book for you. So let me step aside and you tell folks a little bit about your background, okay?
Well, fair enough. Well, I guess I should start by saying I started out to be an academic. I came here, my home in San Francisco area, originally to do a doctorate at UCSF at the medical school. But I was a starving student, and in order to make a living, I blundered somehow into film production, and I became instead a minor movie mogul. I'm the CEO and president of a company called Zorro Productions. As the name implies, we own all the rights to the character of Zorro, and we make Zorro movies and TV shows and stage productions, theme park attractions, games, toys, commercial endorsements, and on and on. Okay. But I never lost my interest in academics, but I did. My interest changed from an obscure area of medicine to cosmology, astrophysics, and eventually SETI. I studied the field and read widely in the field of SETI. And as it happened, I lived quite close to a center of SETI research. The Bay Area has always been sort of ground zero for interest in SETI. The very world famous SETI Institute is located in Mountain View, California. And in 2000, I met the head of the SETI program there, Jill Tarter. Jill Tarter was one of the great founders of the field of SETI, and was the person that Carl Sagan based his Jodie Foster character in the book Contact, in the movie Contact, in the book Contact, and it was a fictionalized telling of her experience in life. Anyway, so Jill and I met socially. We had dinner together, together with her late husband, Jack Welsh, who was the head of the radio astronomy program at UC Berkeley at the time. And after the dinner, I think they came to understand that I have a pretty deep layman's understanding of their field. She asked me, candidly, she solicited me for money, hoping to get a contribution towards what was then simply in the design phase, a radio telescope, which eventually would be built to be called the Allen Telescope Array, which is a leading SETI radio telescope. And I said to her, I turned the tables on her. I said, Jill, you're being penny wise and pound stupid. Instead of asking me for money, why don't you invite me onto the board of the SETI Institute, where I can help multiply the dollars, perhaps, and so on. So I became a member of the board of the SETI Institute. After some years, I rose to be the chairman of the board of the SETI Institute, and from there, I founded a group that with the goal of raising $100 million for SETI research worldwide. I was the president. Frank Drake, the founder of SETI, was my vice president. We had a few Nobel laureates on the board, and MacArthur Fellow. It was a very prestigious board. And eventually, a man named Yuri Milner stepped forward with a $100 million contribution, and Breakthrough Listen was formed. And to this day, I serve on the advisory board that advises how that money might be used. I'm the only layman on that board. So that's a brief history of my life.
That's nice. That's nice. I have to say, I grew up with Zorro. I absolutely love that character. So touche to that one. And of course, we're going to have some people pop in. Hello, Heidi. Much love to you, of course. And she says, of course, hello to you as well.
Hello, Heidi.
Hi, Ebisor. Good to see you. We're going to have people popping in, and I always just like to say hello to them.
Sure. Welcome, welcome.
Yes, definitely. So, as I said, I read your book, and so many questions. This hour and a half and whatever time we spend, we have up to 2 hours. So however long it goes, it goes. But
okay.
Yeah, I have so many
I've got
questions.
a glass of water, and let's go for it.
Absolutely. I have to start off asking you, not related to your book, but in the news, very newsworthy. And it's about 3I Atlas, this alien probe. I just wanted to get your feedback on, you read so many different stories and everybody's got a different opinion about what it is. And you being, such an authority on this, especially on alien probes, what's your take on this whole 3I Atlas thing?
Okay, I've got some very good news for you and some very bad news for you. The good news is that I come from the field of astronomy, and astronomy begins where the atmosphere ends. I come from a very different perspective than the UFO people. I'm not one of you. I'm not a UFO person. That's the bad news. The good news is that from that entirely different perspective, I've come to the conclusion, which I write about extensively in my book, that ET's best strategy is not to send signals from its home planet with radio waves or optical lasers, but rather to send physical spacecraft to our solar system to surveil us and maybe to make contact with us. However, every snowball and every rock is not an alien spacecraft. Right. Okay. Right. And for all intents and purposes, the subject is closed on 3I Atlas. It is not an alien spacecraft. It is an interstellar comet. Now, astronomers have predicted that we would discover interstellar asteroids and comets, and that quite a few of them are coursing through our solar system on a regular basis. And this just happens to be the third one we've discovered, but we should, with new generation of telescopes now coming online, discover them on a fairly routine basis. And what happens is that our solar system, which we think is typical, is surrounded by a cloud of comets. Roughly, it's been estimated something like 1 trillion snowballs or comets in a cloud. And if another star comes near our star, or a rogue planet, or a brown dwarf, or comes through our solar system, it can disturb that cloud and send comets shooting off in all sorts of directions to go shooting through other people's solar systems, and that's what's happened here. That perhaps billions of years ago, another solar system cloud of comets was gravitationally disturbed, and the result is that these wayward comets or asteroids are now zipping through hither and thither, and eventually some of them show up here in our own solar system. That's what this is. It is. It is a comet, and we shouldn't just point at everything that looks a little bit peculiar and say, hey, it's ET. It's not.
Yeah, because Mish mentioned it's generating its own light. I mean, we're hearing so many different stories, and very notable, astronomers and scientists are coming out saying, oh, there's an alien ship headed towards Earth that's going to be here between November and December. And they're like putting the fear of God into people. And I don't understand why some very notable.
I think the Hubble telescope put it all to rest. About 10 days ago when they took a picture of it, and it's a comet. It's a comet.
It is.
And it's not headed towards Earth. It's headed in the general vicinity, but it's going to miss us by a million miles. I mean, more than a million miles. It's going to miss us by a lot. Okay. It's not coming at us. It's not interested in us. It's not intelligent. It's a snowball.
Yeah, because I think it was Avi Loeb kind of started.
Yeah, Avi is, I don't. Avi is pretty quick to jump to conclusions on things, but he stands pretty much alone in doing that.
Didn't the same thing happen with
and,
that?
You can cry wolf so many times,
Right. Didn't the same thing happen with that other one? What was it called? Moa, whatever.
Yeah.
So the same thing.
The same thing. Moa was a rock. It was a very interesting rock, but it was a rock. It was not an interstellar spacecraft.
Yeah. So, okay, let's dive into some of these questions that you postulate in your book. You talk about the Drake equation a lot, and you really dove into what it is and how it's affecting the search for ET. And I really like how you broke that down. And I think kind of at the end of the day, you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's kind of outdated and SETI really can't use it, right, any longer.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And the Drake equation assumes that life is biological, as the term is generally understood. It doesn't consider artificial intelligence like a post-biological beings.
That's right.
So maybe you could dig into that and explain to our listeners what the Drake equation is and how come, because I remember hearing about it and it did get a lot of notoriety
Absolutely.
Some years ago.
It's been said, and I think it may be true, that it is the second most famous equation in the world, second only to E equals MC squared. Okay. It was devised by Frank Drake. Frank Drake was a very dear friend of mine. Frank founded the field of SETI in 1960 when he was the first one to point a telescope at another star, a radio telescope, listening for signals, artificial signals. And in 1961, a year later, he and Carl Sagan pulled together a symposium of astronomers to think about SETI, the field of SETI. And in order to sort of organize their thinking, or this symposium, Frank Drake wrote down on the back of the proverbial envelope an equation to get people to starting to think about it. The exact equation, I don't know if you want me to delve that deeply into it, but it tries to answer the question of N. N stands for the number of civilizations that are currently trying to communicate with us in the galaxy. And in order to derive that, he came up with 7 factors which he multiplied together, which would give us the answer. Well, so what I did in my book is I looked at this factor by factor by factor by factor and realized that it is completely out of date, completely, frankly, worse than useless, misleading, and had to be completely, well, not even revised, actually thrown out. And it's because that the Drake equation can give us absolutely no answer to the question. And I see you throwing it up on the screen, which is great. It can give us no answer. Paradoxically, that's why I'm so interested in SETI, because if you can't figure out by an equation how many civilizations are out there, the only way to find out is through observation or experimentation. And if SETI is that experiment, let's get to it and stop all this crazy making with this silly equation. And just to tell you, I don't know, let's pick since you have it up on the screen, you see that it's n times r prime times f sub p, n sub e, and so forth. Let's take n sub e, just randomly. I could take any one of the factors and talk about it. N sub e is the question of how, Frank Drake was trying to answer the question, how many Earth-like planets are in systems that have planets. Well, first of all, f sub p is the fraction of all planets, of all stars that have planets. But we already know the answer to that. The answer is 1. 100% of stars, for all intents and purposes, have planets. We know that for a fact now. So anything that is 1 in an equation can come out because it doesn't add any information. Not only do all stars have planets, but they have, as far as we can tell, almost all stars have planetary systems, just like we do. We have 8 planets. Other stars may have more planets, less planets, but they have whole systems of planets, just like we do. So the question is then in NE is what percentage of those planets, or how many planets per system, are Earth-like? Well, why Earth-like? What's so special about Earth? Well, because Earth is the most wonderful of all places. It gets into the concept of what we call in astronomy the habitable zone. The zone, and this is what Frank was interested in. He was interested in how many planets are just like Earth, that have water on the surface and a nice atmosphere and so forth. Well, look, and the question is, if you're too close to a star, then it's too cold to have life, and if it's too far from a star, it's too cold, and if you're too close, you're too hot. Well, that's not true, as it turns out, or not necessarily true. We don't know for sure, but we suspect that it may not be true. So let's take our position right now. We're exactly in the center of the habitable zone. We're flush with life, but then the moon is in the same place that we are, and it's as dead as a doorknob. So something else is going on here. And what's going on is obviously we've got an atmosphere and the Earth does not, and the moon does not. But when the Earth was formed and life first began about between 3.7 and 4.2 billion years ago, the Earth was receiving only 70% of the sunlight that it receives now, because the sun has been heating up over the billions of years. Well, if it only received 70% of the sunlight back then, it should have been frozen like a snowball right now, but it wasn't. It was bursting with life even 3.7 to 4.2 billion years ago. What was going on? Well, the difference was that it was a different atmosphere back then. It had carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, so it was a much warmer place. Even Mars, which was even further away from the sun, back then in the early solar system, was again flush with water. Water was flowing all over the surface of Mars, again, because the atmosphere made all the difference. Today, we think it's entirely possible and entirely feasible that there is life in the clouds of Venus, that there's possibility of life underneath the regolith or the rocks in the North Poles or South Pole of Mercury, that there's life potentially on Mars, or fossil life on Mars, if not extant life on Mars. In Jupiter, we're looking closely at Europa, the moon of Europa, which has got an ocean on it, and other moons of Jupiter also have oceans, we suspect. in Saturn, we look to Enceladus, which has great thermal geysers of water shooting out of this moon of Enceladus, and we might be able to, in the not distant future, fly spacecraft through those geysers and test the waters for microbes. And then the other moon of Saturn, Titan, is very cold, but it has liquids all over the surface of it. But it's not liquid water; it's liquid hydrocarbons. So it too might have life, except it wouldn't be Earth-like life. And then when you go out to Pluto, there's suspected to be an ocean under the ices of Pluto as well. So if life can exist anywhere from the poles of Mercury to the oceans of Pluto, and maybe even further, what good is Frank Drake's notion of n sub e, the number of Earth-like planets in a solar system? So just if you take that one factor, you see that already it's deeply lacking. Now I could go on, but I think I would be here for the next hour.
No, it's great. It's great stuff. So you don't essentially believe in the Goldilocks zone theory, then, like we're just in this perfect spot. And if you do, like, your book really, as far as I remembered, doesn't really talk too much about God or intelligent design. What's your, premise on that? Like, do you believe that we are who we are and able to evolve the way we have because of an intelligent being that created us?
Well, look, I think that the question of intelligent design and God is probably in everybody's short list of questions to ask ET. We don't know very much about ET, but we do know that for sure that ET is eons more advanced than we are. And I'll come back to that in a second because I don't want to evade your question about God. But we want to ask ET what it knows about the subject of deity and theology. Do they have a religion? Is the religion faith-based or is it knowledge-based? In other words, they know something rather than just believe in something. So it's one of the main reasons we want to open up a channel of communication with ET. We want to know whether they have the same math that we have. We don't know why it is that the universe seems to work mathematically. We don't know whether math itself is sort of a God's language, if you will, as it's been sometimes called. Whether or not that mathematicians are discovering math as they usually feel that they're discovering something that's out there to be found, or whether they're inventing it in their own brains, or whether it's a human construct. So this is something we want to ask ET, whether they have math and whether their physics and science is the same as ours. But certainly we want to ask them about God. Now, if you ask me my own personal views, my view is that the best way to learn about the deity, let me even start by saying I glossed over something in my own biography, if you will, that I began my own studies in the area of comparative mythology and comparative religion, viewed psychoanalytically, actually was particularly through a Jungian perspective. That's actually my first academic discipline. So, so I'm sympathetic to your question, but in some respects flummoxed by it, because I have chosen long ago the path of science. That I believe that if we're going to find the answers, we're going to find the answers through the intellectual pursuit that we call today science. Let me give you some examples. For example, science seems to have already indicate that you and I are eternal. And it does so in two respects. One is, and I wrote about this extensively in my book, if you remember the part about it, that as near as we can tell, the universe is what is called flat. The topography of it is just flat, which means to say that it goes on forever. That the universe that we see is 13.8 light years wide from one side to the other. And the reason for that is the universe began 13.8 billion years ago, and consequently the distance that we can see is 13.8 billion light years. But the universe doesn't end. It's not a proverbial brick wall at 13.8 billion light years. It just goes on. And we get to see more of it every year. We get to see 1 light year more of it into the distance every year. And as a consequence, we believe that there are just galaxies and stars that go out without end in all directions. And even though there may be no end to all the galaxies and the stars, and not just a large number of them, an infinite number of them, there's only a finite way that matter can organize itself. And so consequently, it can be shown mathematically that at some point it repeats itself. And it repeats itself to the extent that you and I are having the same conversation on some other planet, way, 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 way beyond the visible universe. And then even further beyond that, you and I are having the same conversation again, and further than that again and again and again, out to an infinite numbers of yous, you and I sitting around the same table, having the same discussion. Okay, so in that respect, we're eternal. There's another respect as well. Einstein constructed this very eloquent theory of relativity that admits to no such thing as the flow of time. We don't understand today what time is. We all experience time moving in a certain direction with an arrow. We all remember yesterday, but we don't remember tomorrow.
No.
So we experience a flow of time. But Einstein's theories and the rest of physics knows of no such difference between the past and the future. It knows of only a block of space-time. So that this block of time that you and I are in is eternal. And our four-dimensionality, our four-dimensional forms are eternal. They're outside.
So are you talking about I think time is a man-made construct anyway. It is, obviously. But are you talking about the multiverse theory of quantum physics, that we could be having this conversation eternally throughout the galaxy? Does that work the same way that in the 50s, I Love Lucy, you mentioned, was broadcasted and is still echoing through the universe? Is that the correlation you're making?
Well, we can get to I Love Lucy in another context, but the multiverse is another construct. Okay, so in physics, there is the notion that the universe expanded exponentially in the first tiny fraction of a second, inflated by a huge factor, which flattened it out and made the topography of it flat and therefore infinite in all directions.
Okay.
So that's one concept. The other concept is the multiverse. Now, the multiverse has another implication. There's something called the fine-tuning of the constants. Mm-hmm. Now, in physics, you have mass equals mc equals mc squared, the famous Einstein equation. But if you break that apart a little bit, why c is the speed of light, but the speed of light is equal to 300,000 kilometers a second, 186,000 miles a second, more or less. Why? E equals mc squared is an elegant equation that tells us how things are, but it doesn't tell us why the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers a second and not 200,000 kilometers a second or some other figure. The way we know that the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers a second is we measure it.
Right.
Well, that's it. It doesn't come out of any natural understanding of physics. It has to just be measured. Well, it turns out there are a lot of these constants in nature. There's the mass of the proton, the mass of the neutron, the mass of the electron. There's the fine tuning constant. There's the Hubble's constant, and many other constants that have to be measured empirically. They do not flow from any equation. But here's the thing: if you tweak them ever so slightly, we couldn't exist. Tweak one constant by a tiny bit, and stars will not form. No stars, no us. Yeah. Tweak another one, and the universe will expand just for a brief moment and collapse in on itself again. Again, we couldn't exist. Tweak a third one, and you get hydrogen, but nothing else.
Right.
And that's a pretty boring universe, and on and on. And it turns out when you multiply all of these fractions together, that it's one chance in a trillion. I don't know. It's a huge number.
Yeah.
That our universe would bear life. Well, the only way that we can explain this is that physicists or astrophysicists can wrap their heads around this. There are only really two possible answers: intelligent design,
right,
or a multiverse. If you have a multiverse where the constants in each one of these multiverses is slightly different or randomly assigned, then sooner or later you're going to have one like an arc universe that is congenial to life. And somebody had to win the lottery, and we won it. Okay, so in other words, the chances of you winning the lottery, the Powerball, are infinitesimal, but they're not zero. They're not zero. Right. Somebody has to win. Okay, and it's the same thing here, that somebody won, we won, and it's not a coincidence, because that gets into what's called the anthropic principle, because we can only live in a universe that is suitable for life. In other words, the sun is 300,000 times more massive than the Earth. Is it just one freakish 1 in 300,000th of a chance that we live here on Earth instead of on the sun? No, it's just the sun's inhospitable to life. Therefore, we have to, if we're going to exist, we have to live on here. So that's the way most astrophysicists would like to do it. They want to get away from the concept of God, and they'll go to the multiverse. Alternatively,
I don't know, it's so weird. It's like, you with all that you just said, you think they would be leaning more towards the theory that there is a God and there was intelligent design, but no, it's like they fight tooth and nail to avoid that topic.
Well, look, I mean, if you ask them, God is a hard concept, because who created God, and then who created the creator of God, and who created the creator of God, and is it God's all the way down, so to speak? It's the God concept also has its problems.
Yeah.
But anyway, physics and astrophysics and cosmology, don't really deal with the issues of theology very well. Exactly. They don't handle it very well.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you is because you really take a very scientific approach, and you break everything down, so well in your book. And I've spoken to so many people that have had experiences with sightings, like here, Heidi, amongst many other comments. She said she had her first sighting when she was 8 years old, and it landed pretty close. It's been a part of her life forever, and she never was afraid. And we've got other commenters. I can't get to them all right now, but saying that they've experienced ET in some fashion, whether it was through orbs, seeing orbs, or actual craft. What do you think is accounting for all of these sightings, especially more recently? Like, I'd say in the past 5 years, there seems to be an explosion of them.
Well, I tell you, again, I come from a very different perspective than your typical viewer. And I support you in the sense that I've come to the same conclusion that ETs should be here. If ET exists, if ET wants to make contact with us, then they're not sending signals from their own star system. They're sending spacecraft that are here right now in our own solar system. To that extent, I support your followers in that respect. However, it should be said that first, I don't know very much about UFOs. That's not my field. And you should be happy by that it's somebody from the outside actually supports you. So this is okay. But I'll tell you that I'm heretofore skeptical, and I'll tell you what it would take to make me less skeptical. Okay. So here's what I'm lacking, and Heidi, maybe you can help me on this. But do you remember? Let's say, I don't know. Feels like about 2 months ago. There was a meteor that streaked through the skies, I think South Carolina, North Carolina, somewhere around there. And it was caught on probably hundreds, maybe thousands of dash cams, okay? And that's one thing I'm missing. Photographic evidence by many people. So I don't care about so much the quality of the photograph. I realize that an iPhone taking a photograph of a small object going at a fast distance, maybe a low quality photograph, but if 40 strangers to one another were all sitting on window seats in an airplane, looking out and taking a photo of this, even if it was all poor quality photo, but they're all looking at the same thing in photo, that would impress me. Okay.
What about the one in Arizona though? There was so many people that have been witness to that triangular craft.
Well, that gets to the next point. Okay. I don't know that. Okay. In other words, you're telling me something I completely don't know anything about. Okay. Now, why don't I know about it? The reason I don't know about it is that it wasn't on the front page of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. Okay. And I hate to say it, but I'm kind of a mainstream press kind of guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I know, listen, every time I know a subject really deeply and I read about it in the mainstream press, I can be disappointed too. Okay. Yeah. So I get that. But it's like democracy, it's a terrible form of government except for all the others. Okay.
Right.
And so I'm waiting for something for ET to show itself in a way that, we've got, phalanxes of reporters out there and journalists that I sort of use them as my first filter,
Yeah.
So when it appears on the front page of the New York Times, then I'm going to say, okay, those photos that you're talking about, I know about. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'm sort of lacking in all this is radar corroboration or satellite corroboration. How many commercial satellites are up there, or military satellites or government satellites are looking down on Earth all the time? They see every airplane, but they don't see any UFOs. Okay. So
that I might challenge you on, because a lot of it is hidden from us intentionally. And
okay. That gets my next point.
Okay.
Okay. Conspiracies. Okay. So let's go with the 1947 Roswell conspiracy. The craft crashes. There have been 14 presidents since then. Are we to believe that every single president chose to hide this from us? Are we to believe that the hundreds of people in each administration who must have known about it, not one of them made a deathbed confession, not one of them leaked something to the New York Times?
But John, in all fairness, they have. There's been a lot of disclosure, and like I follow this stuff almost on a daily basis. And yeah, a lot of it is BS. But, you kind of have to use your spidey senses and just kind of navigate through what you think is truth and what isn't. And I've seen a lot of like, now there are so many agencies that have intentionally set up programs to search for ET and meditate and bring orbs out of the sky. I mean, you probably don't know any of this, right? But
right, because it's not in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or,
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. I don't know about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of it.
And it's not my field to go look for it. It's up to you to bring evidence to the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal that is so convincing and overwhelming that they put it on their front page, then I'll know about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and as far as conspiracies are concerned, seriously, there's just too many people who could have said something and didn't say anything. Donald Trump. I mean, I don't care if you love Donald Trump or you hate Donald Trump.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Would he really, hide this from us?
I think he would. What about Bob Lazar? I mean, you had to have heard of him, right? He worked at Area 51.
I don't know. You can remind me, who is he?
Okay, he worked in Area 51, Groom Lake, and he was one of the first whistleblowers. I'm bad with dates, but it's got to be over 20 years, 15, 20 years. If anybody in the chat can help out.
As far as whistleblowers are concerned, who was the guy who was up in Congress, I don't know, last year or the year before? Groh?
Oh, there's so many of them. Gresh.
Groch or something like that?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, but I listened to that testimony,
Yeah.
and all I heard was hearsay. I didn't say anything, he says, but I know somebody who knows somebody who saw something, and I trust that other person who trusts this person. I go, no, that's not evidence.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
No, I love what you, and again, that's why I was so excited to talk to you, because you want empirical evidence. You want it on the cover of the New York Times. But you see, disclosure is a very touchy thing, and it looks different to everyone. So like for some people, disclosure comes through the form of whistleblowing. For other people, it needs to be on the face of, the New York Times. And I think we're going through the process of disclosure as we speak. And there are a lot of black op programs that the government is hiding from us. This black op dollars being millions, if not billions of dollars being spent. So when you ask, would they hide it? Would presidents hide it? Absolutely. I think they would. I think they'd have to. I don't think they'd have a choice.
How many things have presidents tried to hide that end up on the New York Times anyway, or the Wall Street Journal, whatever? All the time, almost you can open up almost any issue of the Washington Post and find some secret revealed. Okay, somebody's leaked something. In this case, there's nothing tangible. Anyway, I'm not here, honestly. Caroline, I'm not here to debate this, because this is not my rabbit hole. I'm not. Right. In other words, I don't go down. I'm not into the business of looking for UFOs. Well, let me put it this way. This is you want to know the UFO test that really is going to convince me? The interlocutory test. Okay, what's that? The interlocutory test. Smacks you right between the eyes. Okay, in other words, when ET lands on the White House lawn, or shines down a laser from the distance of geosynchronous orbit or low Earth orbit or the moon or someplace, and the laser is there for all of us to see.
Right.
It can't be a star because it's monochromatic, and it's a star where there wasn't a star ever there before, so it's not a star. I mean, that's something that we all see. If it takes over 88.5 FM and or whatever, but it's, and when they do, by the way, I mean, when they do make contact with us, they're surveilling us.
Yeah.
They're learning our languages from Sesame Street. They're learning our maths from Khan Academy. They're learning all the rest from YouTube. They're watching reruns of I Love Lucy.
Sure.
They're absorbing our culture right now.
Right.
So when they do open up a channel of communication, it might be in the Queen's own English, or it could be in Mandarin or Urdu or something. I mean, they will already have decoded us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that brings me to so many questions for you. But you said in your book, what if aliens have agreed to give us the cure for cancer on a condition that we agree to replicate their DNA or its equivalent in our laboratories? Should we enter this Faustian bargain? Perhaps the ET message will be seemingly benign. But what if there's something nefarious happening here? It's a Trojan horse. And you go into great detail about what's it called? Meta? Maybe you could kind of explain that to folks, what that is?
Medi?
Medi.
Okay,
yes.
Medi. Okay, well, first of all, let me take a few elements of this. what do we know about ET's intention? I give a long list of reasons in my book as to why it is that ET is here in our own solar system right now, surveilling us. What do we know, though, about ET and its intentions? It's incorrect to say we know absolutely nothing, but it is true that we know nothing about their intentions. We do know a few things about ET, but we don't know anything about their intentions. They may be here to aggress against us. They may be here to save us. They may be here simply to trade with us or to proselytize or just simply to lay down the galactic law upon us. And as I stated in my book also, what I think that they're here to do is to recruit us to help them. Okay, and I can talk about that also. So we know nothing about their intentions. So whether ET more resembles the cuddly, feely type of ET of Steven Spielberg or the vicious one of Ridley Scott's Alien, is strictly a matter of your personal taste at this point. We have no idea. We have absolutely no idea. But we do know this about ET. We know that any alien that we come across will be absolutely aeons beyond us, technologically. We may play better basketball, we may prefer our own taste in music, but technologically, they're way, way beyond us. Now, how do I know this? The universe is, as I said, 13.8 billion years old. The first rocky planets on which life might have evolved came around about 1 billion years after that. Give it 4 to 5 billion years for technological life to arise on those planets, just like it took 4.5 billion years for life to become technological, us, Homo sapiens, on this planet.
Yep.
And that brings us to something like 8 or 9 billion years ago. 8 or 9 billion years ago? That's twice the age of our solar system.
Right.
That's quite a head start they've got on us. I mean, the bad news is that is that we are literally the newest civilization in the galaxy. We're last. Dead last. Get over it. Okay, there's nobody more primitive than we are.
What does Nietzsche say that we're like not even? He uses like 4 ways to analyze like the advancement of like an extraterrestrial planet, and we're not even at number 1 yet. So like I totally get that. But what confuses me, and maybe you can clarify it a little bit. If we're seeing light that's, say, 14 billion years old through Hubble and other telescopes that we use. So what we're seeing is this light is essentially 14 billion years old, right? So we're not seeing what's happening now throughout the universe because we're seeing it from light that's 14 billion years old. At what point would an alien, an ET, need to travel through the galaxy so that we would be able to see it? Like how can we expect to see it if we're looking at light that's old? It's 14 billion years old. Like, I'm confused about that.
Well, when you look at it, when you look through a telescope, you're actually looking through a time machine.
Right.
Okay. So you're actually looking at the universe as it was back then.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So it takes about 1.5 seconds for the light to from the moon to hit the Earth. So we're really seeing what happened on the moon 1.5 seconds ago.
Right.
Right. So this problem of the speed of light, first of all, it gives us a chance. It allows us to see backwards in time and to see the universe as it developed and evolved. So this is, of course, endlessly fascinating to astronomers to be able to utilize this feature of light. But it sets up major problems when it comes to ET. One of the problems, and one of the many reasons why I believe that ET would not transmit signals from its own home planet to us, is that it sets up a terribly difficult call and response time. So
Right.
if they're say 1,000 light years away, and we talk to them, we're not going to hear their response to whatever we said for 2,000 years. The time
Exactly.
it takes for our signal to arrive to them, and then for them to send it back. That's, however.
Okay, so at what point though would they need to, like, where in the galaxy would they need to be for us to communicate with them in a timely fashion? Like,
Here.
would it would
Here
be
in our own
here?
solar
Right.
system. Exactly.
Exactly my
Exactly.
point.
That's, if they're here in our own solar system, they can observe us, decode us, and communicate to us in near real time. So, as I said, the moon is a 1.5 light seconds away from Earth. So if they're sitting on the moon,
No
they
problem.
say, hey, Carol Ann, silence for a second and a half, and you can say, hey, back again, So there's just a 3-second lag downtime between the call and the response. That's manageable. 1,000 years and 2,000 years is not. And the galaxy is 100,000 light years from one side to the other. So 1,000 light years is not a very big distance relative to the size of the galaxy. Right. But can you imagine, a call and response? And as I say, I gave the example in the book. If you tried that, 3,000 years ago, and we talked to ET and we showed them, our best mathematics, which would have been addition and subtraction. Okay, and we showed them, the height of our biggest pyramids, and then we, explained to them how to pray to the sun god Ra. We'd wait, 3,000 years and get back the response. Well, here's how to do long division. Okay, here's how to make an even higher pyramid, and how to break this to you gently. But a star is not a god. Okay? Right. In other words, it would be useless information.
Yeah. It almost seems like when I've always been fascinated with SETI, and I think, I want to say 30 years ago, I think it was SETI, they were asking for people to donate their bandwidth on their computers, right? And I joined that. I let them use my computer. SETI, and I thought what I was doing, I thought it was such a great thing. But for folks that don't really know, their mission statement, and I think it's important for people that are listening that maybe never heard of SETI before, their mission statement is that at the SETI Institute, we explore the origins of life, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and the mysteries of the cosmos. I absolutely love that. Through cutting-edge research, educational programs, and public outreach, we strive to expand humanity's understanding of the universe. So there's so much more to SETI, I think, than people give them credit for. And I think, at the end of your book, you were like a cheerleader for them, right? You were like,
absolutely,
let's do this, right?
Yeah, no, I'm fully supportive of SETI and that grand experiment, except I believe that it's being done wrong. We've looked at something like 1 million stars. Especially if you include foreground and background stars. And our general protocol is to look at stars for 10 minutes each. And then you look at a star for 10 minutes and you move on to the next star. Well, I think, and we have come up dry. I mean, let's be honest, let's face facts. We've come up with zero, zilch, nada. We have to begin to ask ourselves, are we doing this wrong? And my answer is, yeah, we've been doing it wrong. Okay. For one thing, I mean, I've talked about SETI being, that ET is not sending signals from its own home star system. It's a really bad idea. For one thing, it's dangerous. Okay.
Right.
We haven't even talked about this, but it's dangerous. ET may have good reason to know or believe that there are bad actors out there in the galaxy.
Absolutely.
And when they send signals from their own home star system, by definition, they're telling everybody where they are.
Exactly.
But if they send codes here,
METI comes in. Can you just explain to folks what that is? Because you wrote a lot about that in your book, and I loved that session, especially about the ethical components of that and the moral components.
Yeah,
So maybe you can
yeah.
take the wheel.
METI is an acronym. SETI is an acronym. SETI is an acronym that stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. METI is an acronym for Messaging to Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Okay, in other words, we're the ones that send the messages. We're tired of waiting for ET to signal to us. It's not working. Maybe they're waiting for us to start the conversation. Somebody's got to speak up first. Okay, that's the premise. Now, I think the title of my chapter on METI is something that it's like this. I may miss a word or two, but it says, METI, beyond the foolish to the dangerous, arrogant, delusional, unethical, unscientific, illegal, quasi-religious, and cultic.
Yep.
Okay, and so something like that. And so, not to mince words about my feelings about METI. So look, the METIists, would. I hardly know where to begin on this, but the METIists believe that why should we wait for ET? Why don't we, signal first? It's our free speech rights.
Freedom of speech. Yeah.
It's our freedom of speech, and in a perfect world, sure, we would like to get approval from the UN to do it, but we don't have time to wait for the UN. Okay,
right.
Let's parcel, and ET must be altruistic because they're yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Let me parse some of it. Just okay, to give you my feelings about it. Okay. So is ET altruistic and only one are good? No, not necessarily. We have no idea.
That's right.
Okay. I point out that sure, we get along fine with dolphins. Okay.
Yeah.
Another intelligent species on our planet. Right. But if you look at squid, who are also an intelligent species, they'll look at both us and the dolphins as cruel and heartless killers, every one of us. Okay? Right. So, it could be that ET gets along fine in its own society, but is the first to kill anybody else. And then they'll say, but who cares? They're so far away. The stars are, after all, astronomical distances. Yeah. Well, how could they hurt us? And I think that there's a failure of imagination.
Yeah. Didn't we already spill the beans when we launched Voyager?
No, not at all. But here, could ET hurt us? Yeah. They can't hurt us, they would say. And I say to them, my goodness, that's what the Assyrians or the Hittites would say. Right. They couldn't imagine warfare at a distance further than how far their arrows could fly. Right. They had no idea about bombers and missiles and tanks and so on. It's just a failure of imagination.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, what was the point that you made just a second ago?
Well, we were talking about the ethics of it, messaging.
The ethics of it. Okay, the ethics of it. My goodness, who gave them the right to make that roll of the dice?
Right.
Without the approval of the rest of us. And they say, well, we go to the UN, but who's got time for that? And I say, listen, if your cause is righteous, like suffrage or civil rights or something, it's the struggle of a generation and 2 generations, 3 generations, 4 generations. When you signed up for the mission of SETI, you have to know that this is an intergenerational program, and they and I may not be the ones to be here when first contact is achieved, but to them to say that they have the right to speak for all of us and to take the roll of the dice. But the worst is that they claim that they're scientists.
Exactly.
They're not scientists.
Yeah.
Scientists have methods. What's their method?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's not science. It's unauthorized diplomacy. Yeah. So what's their method? They send a message out. And let's say to a star that's, I don't know, you name it 50 light years away, 100 light years away. That's a very, very close star to Earth. Very few stars are that close to Earth. Okay, so let's give it the benefit of the doubt and say it's 50 light years away. Mm-hmm. They send a message 50 light years out. Did they reserve a telescope to get the return message 100 years hence? No, they don't have a telescope ready to get a message 100 years hence. And when the mess and if they did, how long did they rent the telescope for?
Right.
Okay, because you don't know whether ET is going to answer in 10 minutes or 10 years or 10
Exactly.
centuries. So
I
you
don't
have
know.
to
In
dedicate
many
that
ways,
telescope.
in
And
many
you
ways,
can't just have one telescope. You have to have telescopes around
an
the world.
array. Right.
Array
You
of
need
them,
an array.
because as one dips below the horizon, another one has to take over.
Correct.
Have they
Yeah.
done any of this? Of course
No.
not. So it's a religious cult, in my judgment. Religious, why? Because they believe that ET is all good and beneficent.
Right.
It only
Right.
wants our best interest, just like God. They believe that ET is omniscient, even though
Mhm.
our leakage. They always say, "Well, the cat's out of the bag." You mentioned this earlier, Carol Ann. You said that haven't they seen I Love Lucy or something? Our television broadcasts have been going out,
Right.
yeah, but those are whispering. They damp down to basic incoherence at the nearest stars already. They're very weak signals relative to the size of the galaxy. So they believe that even though our signal is extremely weak, that ET knows that we're here. So if they know, then they believe that ET is not just all good and all knowing, but also all potent, omnipotent. Because even though they make absolutely no provision to get a return message from ET, that
Right.
ET will somehow, from 100 light years away or however far they are away, make themselves known to us anyway, even though we're not even looking at them. So it's a cult. It's a religious cult. It's a Hail Mary by some frustrated people that I believe are frustrated SETI enthusiasts who just don't have the patience and just want the answer in their lifetime.
Yeah. Well, what's NASA's take on SETI? Like, how do they work hand in hand? Like, do they
No.
see? Yeah, I didn't think so.
No. Almost in the United States, for all intents and purposes, 100% of our funding is private. It basically comes from wealthy donors. Yuri Milner was one of them, for example. NASA hasn't funded SETI in many years, but in my judgment, NASA should not be the one to fund SETI.
Mm-hmm.
It should be the Defense Department.
Yeah.
Because
touché. Yes.
Because this is a question of situational awareness.
Yeah.
We don't know what's out there. I mean, ET is eons more advanced than we are, and maybe if we get into trouble with ET and we really have to push comes to shove, maybe they're so advanced that it's like a warfare between the 101st Airborne and the Hittites.
Yeah.
The Hittites would be wiped out in 2 minutes. But maybe it is. But how much worse if the Hittites have to fight blindfolded on top of it? They don't even know what's going on.
I'm of the mindset that you're like, I've never seen ET. I've never seen a craft. I've seen anomalous lights. I just saw one last week. Could have been a satellite. I don't know. It was zooming across space and I saw it as clear as day. I know what I saw. Could have been a satellite. I don't know. I've seen those types of things. I've never seen ET. I've never seen a craft. So, and I tend to think like you that, these things could be hostile. And I have to laugh at the Twilight Zone episode, how to serve a human.
How to serve man.
How to serve mankind. Hysterical.
This goes back to a question you asked earlier that I didn't really respond to, and that is that, should we be cautious with ET? Yeah, absolutely. Yes. We should really be worried. We should any communication we get from ET, we should segregate from the internet. We should, it could contain all kinds of viruses. It may look like it's the cure for cancer and be something altogether malicious instead. I mean, we just don't know. We just have to deal with ET with both hands in our pockets, no matter how benign they may be in appearance.
Yeah, there's so many good comments. I'm going to try and get to some of them later, but Evisor made a great comment here. When NASA did their press conference after Grush testimony, which is the one you were talking
Yeah.
about. They pulled every trick in the book to not say that it was UFO, that UFOs are ET. See, and I think there's so much of this. I mean, look at Arrow too. They're always pulling stunts. One month they come out and say, yes, we have proof that there is extraterrestrial life out there. There are unidentified craft. And then a month or two, 6 months later, oh no, there's nothing. I don't know what's going on. And that's what's so frustrating about this whole thing. Like, why can't they just tell us the truth and be honest either way?
Listen, I think they are being honest.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I really do. I think that I don't think our government has any definitive proof of ET, and I don't think they're hiding anything.
But why would these people get up and testify and say, like Grush, he said he saw biologics?
No, Grush did not say that. He said he heard from somebody who said he saw. It was hearsay.
Oh, the whole thing? I thought he said he saw pictures of biologics.
Nope.
No, so this was just all.
He knew somebody who knew somebody who saw something.
Knew somebody, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Unnamed somebody, I would say. We have no idea who his source was. All he says is, "I swear by this guy. I've known this guy." Sorry, this doesn't rise to the right level for me.
Yeah. Well, do you think, you mentioned in your book, prosaically, if certain incongruities of the cosmos are found to be real in the face of extended examination, it may indicate that the universe is a simulation? And you talked a little bit about that before.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jibber jabber going on about a simulated universe. We live in a simulation, and just give us your 360 overview of what you think.
Well, I mean, it's a possibility. You can't deny the possibility of that we are possibly a simulation, and that you and I are just avatars in some other dimensional teenagers computer game. So we better be nice to him, or otherwise he'll hit the escape button and we're done.
Exactly.
Okay, so unfortunately, I hate that solution to the question of our existence, because I think of it as nihilistic. But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily wrong. There's some solutions that are nasty solutions. I'll give you another one that's a nasty solution that for the life of me I can't discount. I can't find any reason why it couldn't be true, and that is that Drake's N, the number of civilizations out there in the galaxy, is not many, like there are many civilizations out there. And it's not just one, us, that we're all alone, but it's two, us and one other. And that one other, like a queen bee that first emerges from its cell, kills all the other queens that are still in their cells. So she's the only queen, is out there ready to kill us. And that, essentially, we could wake up one day and see that there's a comet, not 3I Atlas, because it's not headed towards us, but something like that that's headed right towards Earth. And we'd say, "Oh, bad luck! Oh my God!" And we'd call together the UN Security Council to see what remnants of the world might be saved. When all of a sudden the astronomers see another comet coming right at us, and then a third one, and a fourth one, and a fifth. It's basically they could be out there in the outer solar system right now manipulating the comets. Unfortunately, it is a valid possible solution for why it is we appear to be all alone, because it is quite a head scratcher why it is we don't see evidence for ET as plainly as we can look up and see the full moon.
Right.
And and we have to have some explanation for what that is. Now, in my book, I tell you that my favorite explanation is my own. Okay, and my explanation is that I've told you that ET has populated our solar system with probes.
Yes.
but it has to get information back to its
Right.
progenitor civilization. How's it going to do that? And the only viable way it can do that is to use repeater stations. And to essentially that there are, and I posit in my book, I hypothesize that there are repeater stations or communication nodes located probably around every single star and even between stars to simply repeat signals.
Yeah.
And those are connected by lasers, which is the most efficient way to communicate at that range. And those laser beams are simply narrow. They're pencil thin. They spread out, by the way, with distance. But they're sort of like when you go into a museum and lasers are there to protect the artwork, or my garage opener has a laser, a guard against it closing. So those lasers are used to communicate, and so essentially the Earth is not in the path of those lasers. Those lasers don't hit Earth. They go to Alpha Centauri in one side and Barnard Star, which is another close star, in another direction, but they don't hit Earth. And so we're surrounded by a cacophony of these lasers. But since none of them ever hit Earth, it seems as though we're living in silence when we're not. We're embedded in this huge cacophony. It's like when I walk down the street, I don't hear telephone conversations because the telephone lines are kind of above my head.
Right. Oh, good Lord. You talk about probes a lot in your book, which I really liked. What have you ever postulated that maybe these ET are entering through like wormholes or portals of some fashion, and they're kind of popping in and out of existence?
Well, I don't deal with that in the book, and
Right.
and the reason for that is that I keep the book grounded in what
Science.
is understood science at this point.
Right.
We do know, as I said, we do know a few things about ET, and one of them is that they're stuck with the same laws of nature that we're stuck with. Okay, so they may know a little bit more than we do, and probably they know a lot more than we do. But gravity for them is the same as gravity for us. The speed of light for them is the same as it is for us, and so forth. So right now, our best thinking is that we can't really build wormholes that
can do that.
People can actually traverse. Okay, right now, our best physics say that it's an interesting theoretical construct, but it's not something that can be physically built. Right now, that's the state of play. That could change right now, but
what about in quantum mechanics? The theory that once you observe something, it immediately changes the outcome. So maybe by the mere fact of SETI doing these observations, it's changing the outcome. I mean, is that a possibility? Just by the observing, we're changing the reality?
Well, yeah. Along those lines, I mean, and to an earlier question that you asked me about, why we exist in a way.
Yeah.
The brilliant Nobel laureate physicist John Wheeler theorized that humankind may have caused the universe to be suitable for humankind, so that that humans created the universe and the constants of the universe to be friendly to life. But that's backwards causation. But backwards causation is not unallowed in quantum physics. That's why you can have the phenomenon of entanglement, where two objects, two particles, no matter how far they are in time and space, can nevertheless instantaneously react to one another without normative causation. But if the entire universe was a quantum, was a quanta of something, a quantum universe, then it is possible that we ourselves backward created the universe to suit us. Anyway, so
I have a question for you. In your book, you say currently the unexplained astronomical phenomenon that most excites SETI scientists are fast radio bursts, or FRBs, right?
Right.
These are what? Energetic bursts of radio waves. Is this what SETI is using currently to detect ET?
No.
These fast radio.
No. What they are. One of the things that we should always be looking at in SETI is weird physical phenomena. They may or may most likely be, physical, but we shouldn't immediately dismiss the possibility that they are somehow an artifice created by a technology. So for example, when pulsars were originally discovered, neutron stars that spin rapidly and emit lights and in time pulses were first discovered. The discoverers, absolutely considered the possibility that these were artificial signals. And they called them, in their own laboratory, they called them LGM, for little green men. And they really kept that hypothesis alive as they sought confirmation. But eventually they found a second pulsar and eventually concluded that it is a physical phenomenon. But I think they balanced that consideration exactly correctly. Now I've got a situation now where I cite in my book observers of white dwarfs who saw white dwarfs dimming and didn't consider that it could be something artificial, perhaps a big spaceship or a world ship in front of the white dwarfs causing the dimming. They never considered that, and that's too bad, because in my book I wrote a whole chapter about the fact that white dwarfs are the best place to look for ET. White dwarfs, for those of you who don't know, are dead stars or in the process of dying. Essentially, what happens with our sun, which is would typically, at the end of our life, which is about another 5 billion years from now, the outer atmosphere of our sun is going to expand such that it either engulfs or almost engulfs the Earth. The sun is going to expand out to that size. We're going to be toast. The Earth is going to be toast.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but what do we do about that? Well, I wrote another chapter in my book which says we can't really escape. There's no way to get off and move all of humanity to another star system. That's an impossibility. And I regretfully write a whole chapter on why that just can't happen. So if you can't escape and passively succumbing to extinction is not a good idea either, I think we all agree with that, then your only real choice is to shelter in place, to survive in situ. And in order to survive around a white dwarf, you're really going to have to do a lot. You're going to have to build some big, astro engineering projects just to be able to survive this dying phase of your star, which is your only option.
That? I mean, is that something that's plausible? Can you actually prepare?
Absolutely.
Really?
It's absolutely survivable by advanced technologies. Absolutely. You just go out in our solar system, we just go out to Pluto, hang out in Pluto for a while we're in the red giant phase when the balloon's out. And then when it comes to a white dwarf, we can come right back to Earth and go settle back on Earth. The Earth may have been pretty, burnt. Okay, may not still have a crust, but at least it's got the same gravity and the same night daylight cycle that we're used to.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's going to require a lot of astroengineering, and that astroengineering may be discoverable. We may be able to detect ET's action, whether or not ET's trying to signal to us anything. We can look at white dwarfs and see if we can see, giant megastructures or some indication that there's technology there. By definition, they're advanced civilizations because they're old. For us, it's going to be 10 billion years. So if it's a 10 billion year old civilization, that's an old civilization. It's going to have very good technology, and there may be something detectable there. So we're looking at the wrong stars. We keep looking at stars like our star,
right?
And we should be looking at dead stars. So that's one of the reasons why our experiments keep failing.
Has SETI taken that seriously? Your recommendation to do that, or?
Not yet. I think there have been occasional looks at white dwarfs, but in very much a minority way. I think now that my book is out, and as soon as I get my own copies of it, I'll be sending copies to all the leading SETI scientists in the world.
I was going to ask you that if they read it.
And I'm friendly with most leading SETI researchers, and hopefully I will persuade them that they're looking at the wrong stars. They should be devoting a lot of their time and energy looking at white dwarfs, dead stars.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if the folks at SETI read your book. I'm sure you have close.
Oh, it just came out. The book just came out last week. So.
Oh, do you have a copy that you could hold up?
I don't. I didn't get my own copies yet.
You didn't get
it. I mean, your viewers can get it. They can go to my website, my author's website, johngertz.com, and there'll be links for how you can purchase the book. And so I've got friends of mine who have received theirs from Amazon or at a bookstore or whatever. But I myself have not yet received my own copies. I know they've been shipped to me. I just haven't gotten them yet. So I can't hold it up for you.
All right, that's fine. That's exciting, though. It's exciting for you. Okay, so you say that ET may be waiting for us to call. I don't know why.
I don't think that's the case whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't think that's
what the many people would be saying. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you said that leads to the main point of your book, which is speculate if you cannot resist, but for the love of the heavens, just run SETI experiments. I love that.
That's true. I think
great.
there may be words to that effect, maybe the last words in the book. But one of the things that I'm trying to do in the book, and most importantly, I think my idealized reader is some 30-something-year-old congressional staffer. Okay,
Yeah.
The reason is I'm trying to move public policy. I'm trying to wake people up to the fact that ET's best strategy is to send probes here, and that we don't have our act together at all.
No.
Whatsoever. I mean, what are we going to do the day that ET calls to us in English and says, hi guys, I'm here. Well, let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say that ET from its probe, maybe at the distance of the moon or something, says, okay, I've been looking at the nightly news, your nightly news, and I kind of think you're a wretched bunch, and I was thinking of destroying you. But then I also tuned into some reruns of I Love Lucy, and they gave me a good laugh. And so, you know what, I'll take a flyer on you guys, and I'm going to give you the knowledge and wisdom of the universe. I've got Encyclopedia Galactica on my version of a thumb drive or a hard drive. It's sitting here in my cargo bay. Come on up and get it. What do? Won't the Chinese immediately rush to get it, and the Americans rush to get it? Maybe Elon Musk, as a private individual, who let's say we get there first before the Chinese.
Yeah, and I love that
to shoot down our returning spacecraft.
Exactly.
Lest we get all the technologies that will disadvantage them. What do? So this stuff, folks, has got to be thought out in a serious way now. Okay?
It doesn't. It's not. And that's something I learned from reading your book too. And I love how you presented that information. Like we just don't have our shit together, to put it, bluntly, we just don't. Who makes these decisions, really?
Who makes the decisions? Exactly. Let me take another hypothetical. Let's say I am wrong. And let's say that the classic SETI paradigm is correct, that ET is sending a signal from its own home planet, and the signal arrives and says, hey guys, we want to communicate. Do you want to communicate with us? Well, what do? Do we respond? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So it's not such a simple answer, because what if that ET is like a bat echolocating?
Right.
Okay, or alternatively, it could be the portal to great knowledge and wisdom and so forth. It's a roll of the dice. Who gets to make that decision? Is it the UN? Is it by the General Assembly? And or the UN Security Council? And if it's the General Assembly, is it 2/3? Is it 3/4? Who gets to decide? What do we say in return? Okay, it could take us years to figure this out. In the meantime, what if ET is doing the same thing we're doing? We look at one star for 10 minutes, the next star for 10 minutes, the next star for the next. Well, what they're most likely doing is they're sending that signal to this star for 10 minutes, and that star for 10 minutes, and that star for 10 minutes. They're doing the same thing we're doing. The chances, okay, so now they're waiting for our response. Well, if they're 100 light years away, our response will come for them in 200 years. So are they going to wait for 200 years plus 10 minutes, 200 years plus 10 days, 200 years plus 10 years? Crazy. Who knows? Our only rational thing to do is to think this out now, decide now what we're going to do. And if the decision that we collectively take in a worldwide democratic fashion is that we are going to return a signal, then we have to decide what we're going to say. And then the minute we get that signal from ET, we hit the send button, because that decision's already been made.
Yeah.
Okay. And we instantaneously send the send button. That's the only rational course. But that requires, and so in my book, I call for a broad-based. First, I call for a broad-based committee of experts, and not just astronomers. Perish this thought. It's astronomers that came up with the stupid idea of METI. Okay.
Yeah.
We should also include diplomats, economists, military planners, emergency planners, evolutionary biologists, cryptologists, linguists, and on and on. And sit down and think this out for years, possibly, and all the contingencies, and deal with it and start to plan around contingencies, just in the same way that we plan for other natural disasters or other kinds of contingencies.
Nothing like that is happening at the moment. There's no coalition of folks trying to put this together. This is crazy.
No, there is a subcommittee of astronomers, the self-appointed astronomers who are doing some consideration, but it's many levels below where it needs to be. But and there needs to be an international treaty, and in that regards, I wrote a treaty. I published it in the book. It's the last final chapter before the epilogue. Yeah. And because it's not, at least the first draft of treaty is not forgive the term, rocket science. It could, it's something that I managed to do. I don't think it was a huge.
I thought it was brilliant. Yeah, it was short enough and summarized enough to really, I think, get the job done, right?
Yeah, exactly. At least it's get something on the table for negotiations.
Yeah, and then you could expand from there. You kind of work the bugs out. And has SETI worked with any agencies like MUFON, or have they collaborated with any other organizations that are looking for ET? There's got to be other ones other than SETI, although I'm not too familiar with them, other than MUFON, really.
Well, look, there's SETI programs all over the world now. Even the Chinese have a robust SETI program. Yeah, and this is something I think we should, face, that much to my sorrow, our SETI scientists train their SETI scientists on how to do this. Okay, and I disagree with that. I think we're in a SETI race, just like we're with the Chinese, just like we're in an arms race, and a space race.
They're already on the dark side of the moon. The Chinese, they're mining already on the dark side of the moon.
Well, no, they're not mining. They're not there on the dark side of the moon yet.
I heard they're there.
No, they're not there yet. Okay, but I'm sure they would like to be.
So that's fake news then. They're not there.
No, they landed a craft, but
they did land a craft.
But it's not mining. It's not a mining operation.
Oh, all right. But they did land a craft.
It's a little craft.
Okay.
But yeah, we're in a race with them to get to the far side of the moon. We're in a lot of races with them, and this is one of them. Because let me be honest with you. I mean, I don't have anything against the Chinese as a people, and I don't have anything against Chinese scientists. But you know, if you have conspiracy theories as they apply to the American government, just, you know, let's see a show of hands here among your viewers. How many of you honestly believe that if the Chinese are the first ones to make contact with ET, that they're going to reveal it to the world?
No,
or they're going to stamp it top secret, and that's the last we're ever going to know of it?
Maybe they have already, and they're not saying. Who knows? I mean, who knows what they've discovered? Maybe they already have made contact with ET.
No,
we wouldn't know.
We wouldn't know. We wouldn't know. So I think that's why I go back and I say that the natural funding source for SETI is actually the military, DoD. This is really about situational awareness. We have no idea what's going on out in our own solar system, never mind the rest of the galaxy.
Your book nails it in every way for me. So what do you think the real reason that SETI has found zero signals despite billions of stars? And why are our assumptions all wrong about it? Like, well, let's tackle the first part first.
That's fair enough. Okay, so the standard protocol, as I said, is you look at each star for 10 minutes. Okay, why doesn't that work? Well, for one thing, I've mentioned already, it's dangerous. ET wouldn't do it because it exposes them to danger. Number two, it gives ET absolutely no information back. They send a signal.
Nothing. Crickets.
They hear nothing back. They could have to send signals to Earth for billions of years and not hear anything back. Even if we finally detect a signal, we may not receive it. But if they send a probe, then they can do actual science. They could have sent their first probe, 4 billion years ago, and discovered there's a beginning of life on Earth. And then they'd find out, several billion years later that there's oxygenation and therefore multicellularity. And then it begins to get interesting. They keep sending probes, at maybe 100 million year intervals until they begin to see. And then perhaps one day they see it's the signs of agriculture and pyramids. And now they realize something's getting technological down there. So it returns information to them. Sending signals returns nothing. The next problem is the temporal problem. I said that I've already hinted at this already. We look at stars for 10 minutes each. They transmit for 10 minutes each to each star. So as they're transmitting, we're receiving, and the chances of us, as we're all going around lining up exactly at the same time in the same 10-minute window, is close to zero. Okay, so it's a stupid strategy. And then it gets to the question of equity. Okay, it costs a lot of energy and a lot of time to transmit. They could have had to have transmitted to us for a few billion years on the possibility that maybe there's life on Earth that will return a signal to them. Okay, now that they cost enormous amounts of energy to transmit like that over a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons to send a probe. It's much cheaper to send a probe.
Sure.
You send it, put all your information on a hard drive and let it go. Okay. It's much cheaper than transmitting over potentially billions of years.
But how would you solve that problem with getting the data back? Would it be satellites? Would the probes be bouncing?
Correct.
Okay.
Essentially, the probes give the information back. Essentially, the probes in our solar system transmit information to the next solar system, which then transmits it to the next, and it's like fire brigades. The information backwards to the progenitor civilization, so that they hold. And it's not just one civilization; it's probably a whole internet, a whole galactic civilization of lots of civilizations that are constantly in communication with one another through through these lasers that are connecting each and every star system, which actually leads me to an important point.
Yeah.
That's Earth's most important asset, and negotiating power. We have negotiating power with ET. And we shouldn't forget this, that ET needs us in some extremely important and fundamental way. The galaxy is interlinked with a massive number of these probes, probably trillions of these probes to connect the galaxy. Who can build them all? No one civilization can build and maintain this vast communications network.
Yeah.
So they need to recruit us to help them build probes and bring communication nodes and to launch them, and also to use our own transmitters, which are much bigger than the satellite probes, to transmit from star to star directly. They need us to help build out and maintain this galactic internet.
Wow. I never thought of it that way. That's mind-blowing stuff, honestly. And I love it. I think it solves so many problems. So the latest research that we have that SETI, like the latest technology, what is it that SETI is using in the form of technology that's getting better every year, that's enabling us to see maybe more or receive the signals in a better fashion? What are they doing in terms of tech to make it better?
Okay, so the simple answer is that we currently do more SETI today in one day than we used to do in a whole year.
Oh.
And the reason for that is several-fold. One, that there's you may be aware of what's called Moore's law, that that computers become more powerful, exponentially more powerful, and if you will, double their power in 18 months or whatever the factor is now. So
it's less.
It's less. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So so the back end computing component has greatly improved. Our search algorithms have improved because when you get these signals out, it's not like the Jodie Foster in the Contact movie. Nobody's standing there with headphones listening for the signal. It's being analyzed by computers that spit out the interesting signals. So the algorithms have gotten better. The funding has gotten much better.
Good.
There's, both the SETI Institute and Breakthrough Listen, who are the two largest SETI programs in the world, are very well funded, but so are the Chinese. And there are robust other SETI programs at UCLA, Penn State, the UK, both at Oxford and Manchester, in Italy, in South Africa. So there are more SETI programs, more scientists doing SETI, and between the money and the fact that there are more scientists I think that pretty much, I have to think about it, but I think pretty much every single radio telescope in the world, there may be an exception out there, I can't think of that at the moment, but every single telescope in the world, radio telescope, is currently engaged in SETI. They are, right? Currently engaged in SETI. They do other astronomy as well, but they also do SETI, and very many optical telescopes are also doing SETI. So wonderful. So the world of SETI has expanded enormously, but it's only as good as your paradigms. And if you're looking in the wrong place, it doesn't matter how if we're looking for a needle in the haystack, but if you're looking in the wrong haystack, it's. Oh my goodness, this is crazy stuff. I love it. And I love that you're not tainted by the UFO stuff that's out there on social media and all over the whole entire internet. You're so untainted by that. And that's what makes your book so brilliant too, because there's none of that in there. There's none of that. It's just logical science
mapped out very prosaically. I loved
Yeah.
it.
Yep. It's just and I'm simply just not one of your community, but
Right.
just accept that the fact that somebody who's not in your community has really, I don't know much more about UFOs than what I've read in the newspaper. I'm really not. I'm
Yeah.
really kind of ignorant on it.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, because I
is.
come without having any axe to grind or any
Yes.
agenda here. I've come to the same conclusion that
I
you
think
use that strategy is to come here.
Absolutely. I think any scientist that reads your book has to love it. It's just from that perspective. But yet it's easy for a person like me to read and mull through.
Well, let me say that when I originally, it's being published by Oxford University Press, okay,
Wow.
which is an academic
Nice.
press. They originally sent it to 2 reviewers who are anonymous to me. But you could tell from the reviews that they're astronomy professors, because both of them said that they would assign it to their students. But the editorial board, because it's such a controversial subject, sent it to 2 more, which they don't do this. They sent it to 2 more reviewers, and the next 2 reviewers said the same thing. That there was an excellent book, and that they would, but I didn't write it for college students. I wrote it for laymen. I'm a layman myself, and I wrote it for laymen.
Yes.
And it's written, I think, with a lot of fun and humor, and it is absolutely easy to read. I know you said that there's some mathematics in it. I promise, it's middle school mathematics. It's just multiplication. It's just some simple multiplication, nothing else.
Yeah.
It's not even middle school. It's like 6th grade mathematics, and it's just a little of it. Just in a few places, I have to get a little mathematical, but it's only
correct.
But the point is, I try to keep it easy, and I try to keep it, something. Listen, I've tested it with my friends who are not astronomers, my wife who's an artist, and on and on. And the reason I wanted to keep it simple and keep it funny, I think funny and humorous, is that I'm trying to get people to wake up. I've got a serious mission here of public outreach. I want this to just be in college classrooms. I need it to be in the halls of Congress, to wake up and realize, guys, we got to do some contingency planning. It's real. It's here. They're in our solar system, and they could be making contact with us on any Tuesday afternoon.
That's correct. That's correct. So what do you have in the works? I mean, I know your book isn't even out really yet. People can pre-order it, right?
It is out. It came out on August 11th, last week.
Oh, okay. So they can go to your website.
Completely out. It's just that the publisher is supposed to send me my own copies.
And you didn't get them yet.
And I didn't get them yet. Okay.
All right.
So,
but
you can absolutely get it on Amazon or whatever you want. It's there.
Okay, I'll make sure I have the link too in the description of this video.
Or you can go to my website, johngertz.com.
Yeah.
My website. You can get links to Amazon or to Oxford University Press. You can buy it there.
Like
and
Amazon.
You can also see a lot of videos that I've done and links to my academic papers. Because I've published a lot of papers in peer-reviewed astronomical journals. So.
And you have a nice YouTube channel and so on. You have a nice presence out there. So are you thinking of next steps? Like, are you dreaming about what you might be writing about next, or where this is going to lead for you?
Okay, well, that's a very good question. 2 things. Number one is the answer to that is twofold. Number one is I'm already writing the next volume. Okay, so the next book on the same topic, picking up topics that I didn't touch on yet, or didn't touch on to my satisfaction, fully touch on in the first book. So I am already started the second book.
Nice.
But I'm also now very anxious to see what the public response is to my book, and particularly the treaty that I'm suggesting, the committees of experts I'm suggesting be formed, and I need somebody to pick up the mantle and help me lobby Congress, lobby world leaders to get them to focus on this as a very serious contingency. We're looking for near-Earth objects, what are called NEOs, which are like asteroids that are possibly going to impact the Earth. look, once every 65 million years, an extinction event, asteroid or comet hits the planet. In other words, when the dinosaurs wiped out the dinosaurs was the last time. Okay, it's a rare event, but it's an important rare event. And it's very useful and important that we're looking and we're spending a lot of time and energy for this contingency that will probably never happen in our lifetime or our kids' lifetimes or our great-grandchildren's lifetimes. But nevertheless, we need a plan for that contingency.
Absolutely.
If we can do planning for that, we can and should do planning for this.
Oh, guaranteed. Because like you said before, they could come next week. They could come tomorrow. You know, we need to have these things in place. And
or they could come in 1,000 years from now. And I'll let me explain that. You know, I have to ask myself the question, why have they not yet opened up a channel of communication?
Right.
If they're sitting on an asteroid someplace, and, you know, when you look at asteroids, you know, most of the small asteroids, all we know about them is that they reflect a little bit of sunlight. Yeah. We only think that they're asteroids because what else could they be? Actually, they could be alien probes. I mean, seriously, nobody knows, honestly. But why don't they open up a channel of communication already? And I have two possible answers for that, or three possible answers. The first one I hate, okay, but it is possible, and that is that they're simply surveilling with no intention of ever doing anything else.
Which is a viable possibility.
Which they're essentially ripping off our IP, our intellectual property. They're learning, but not, okay, that's possible, but I don't think so because, as I said, I think they need us.
Okay.
So I don't think that that's what's happening, but it is possible. The second possibility is that we're difficult to decode. I mean, their natural language may be like the waggle dances of bees or the color changes of cuttlefish or something. You know, it may be damn difficult to detect, to decode us, even admitting that they have advanced computers on their probe. I mean, take, you know, E.O. Wilson, the great entomologist, he studied ants for decades and finally figured out a little something about how ants communicate with pheromones. Okay, ants took decades to understand. Okay, you know, how much more complicated are human beings?
Exactly.
That's one problem, that they simply just aren't finished decoding us. The second problem, and if that's the case, then they could make communication with us next Tuesday after they finished looking at enough I Love Lucy reruns, or, you know, but the other possibility is that they're either not able to or not authorized to make contact with us. They have to shunt all the data back to the home planet or home civilization for either deeper decoding and or permission or instructions on what to do.
Yeah, I mean, we have that law of non-interference, right? Maybe they have that where they
could be. But if they're sending a signal back to a civilization that may be 1,000 light years away, let's say, then it's going to be 2,000 years before the probe is authorized to, you know, the 1,000 years for the signal to go there and 1,000 come back. You know, it'll be 2,000 years before we hear anything. And you know what? That's our problem. You and I are frustrated by that, Carol Ann. But you know, ET deals in deep time.
That's right.
For them, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, no big deal.
I love all three of those premises. I think they're great. They're great. They make so much sense. I mean, I would hope it would be number 3, but
I would hope it's number 2. That is to say that they'll open up a communication with us next Tuesday, but I just don't know. You know,
I don't know. Sometimes I can't
now we could look for ET here. We could look for those probes, but we haven't. There's been no serious investigation of our own solar system looking at it. We could ask ourselves the question: are those asteroids really asteroids? You know, are they all really? Maybe 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 of them aren't. Okay. we could go out and look at it, but we do that a little bit at our peril also. Even that is a fraught thing. So let's say we determine that some asteroid out there is actually artificial.
Right.
Okay. And there are ways to do that technically, just nobody's done it. But what do? Do we shoot a message to them which says, okay, we know you're out there looking at us. Come on, let's talk. Okay. Well, maybe that's the galactic protocol. Maybe it's up to us to tell them we were interested in talking. Okay, maybe, or maybe that asteroid or that probe that looks like an asteroid, basically computes to itself, oh damn, they're on to me. I better snuff them before they snuff me.
Oh, I see. But even with that Maui one, whatever it's called, Maui, which I think is a Hawaiian term, right?
Hawaiian.
Yeah. We could have never got a message to it, and it disappeared back into the universe, right? So
Correct.
how would we do that, like with our technology today?
Oh, well, we could send a signal. I mean, there was a rock. Believe me, honestly, it was a rock.
I don't
care. Avi Loeb is dead wrong about this. It was a rock, but we could send a signal because it's wasn't traveling very fast, and certainly not very fast relative to the speed of light. So it's no problem at all to send a radio signal to it, or an optical signal to it. Because we can't catch up with it with a spacecraft. It's gone.
No way. Yeah,
we can't catch up to it. But light travels a lot faster than that. That's one of the main reasons why I'm convinced. It's just one of the reasons. There are a lot of reasons, but it's one of the reasons I'm convinced it was a rock and not a spaceship. Is that it's traveling at a relatively slow speed, and if it was coming from, let's say, Barnard star, which is like the second closest star to Earth, and going to Alpha Centauri, which is the Alpha Centauri 3-star system, which is the closest stars to Earth, then you'd go, I would be the first to pop the champagne, because if a spacecraft, if it was a spacecraft going, it would be a spacecraft if it was going from such a contrived trajectory from one nearest star, then to Earth or to our star, and then to the next nearest star.
Right.
What are the chances of that? Okay, I would say that is absolute evidence that was ET, but that's not what we saw. What we saw was a slow-moving rock coming from absolutely nowhere in particular, probably millions of years before since the last time it was anywhere near a star.
Yeah.
And headed to absolutely nowhere at slow speed.
Yeah.
It'll be millions of years again before it comes to another star. That to me was very strong evidence that this is not an alien spacecraft.
Yeah. And I like to hear it in that way instead of, everybody saying, oh no, it was definitely a probe. It was an alien probe, just jumping to conclusions and trying to scare people. But John, thank you so much for today. See, 2 hours flew by.
Carol Ann, there was so much fun. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I did too. And I would love to have you back because I literally have 2 more pages of questions we never got to.
Okay. We'll find the opportunity.
Definitely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
It was so much fun. Thank you, John. I'll be in touch.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Wow. That was so much fun. Oh my gosh. I absolutely had a blast interviewing John. And thank you so much again. Your work in Reinventing SETI forces us to confront not only the questions of whether or not like we're alone, but more profound questions of like that maybe we're not ready to answer. So thank you so much for your unique insights. And to all of our listeners, thank you so very much for joining us. I hope this interview changed the way, maybe a little bit, that you see the night sky from a distance, this empty expanse that we live in. Maybe you can see it a little bit differently. Check out SETI. I signed up for their newsletter too. I think they're awesome what they're doing, and I fully support their work. So I recommend everybody go check out SETI as well. And of course, visit John's website. And we will have all the links and information in the description of this video, so you can always check it out there. But thank you all. You've been listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled on United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. Before we go, let me just say real quickly that I'm very excited for my guest tomorrow, which will be a pre-recorded show, but nonetheless, it will be an awesome interview. And that is with John Offit. And we're talking about the unexplained, terrifying beasts of North America. So definitely tune in for that. He is one of the most leading authorities on the topic. So thank you all again so much. And everyone in the chat, I'm so sorry I didn't get to ask some of the questions, but if you go on YouTube, you can leave your questions in the comment field and I'll make sure that John gets them. So please do that. And thank you all, everybody, for supporting me in the chat and joining in. I love each and every one of you. Have a blessed rest of your day. God bless, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.